Welcome back. This is another episode of Don't Take Us Seriously podcast. I'm DJ,
It's your boy O.
and today we'll be talking about some Week 7 tidbits, some more information for you guys, and just to kind of get you guys on your feet. We'll be talking about Christian McCaffrey trade. We'll get a chance to really hit more home on the young quarterbacks. We'll also get a chance to hit more on the older quarterbacks, and we're going to bring it home with some fantasy bits. So, with this Christian McCaffrey trade, I know there was a lot that went on with this whole thing. What are your thoughts? Who won the trade? Where are we going with it?
So I think San Fran won the trade. I think that Christian McCaffrey is a natural fit for a Kyle Shanahan style offense, and it just makes San Fran that much more dangerous. You ally Christian McCaffrey with Debo, George Kittle when healthy, that spectacular offensive line. I think it just makes the sense. I know that San Fran gave up quite a bit of picks in regards to this trade, but I I don't think it was enough to hold them back too much.
Okay, I can see that. Now we all know that Kyle Shanahan, through his system and everything, running backs come here, they have their best years here, or they get a chance to really show what their true potential is. Now we look back at some guys like Alfred Morris, who's had big years. We look back at other guys like Devonta Freeman. You can even go all the way back to Terrell Davis for some of you old heads out there. But what we do know for sure is Christian McCaffrey is a three-down back. He's a threat on every single level on the field. You always have to account for him. Well, Kyle Shanahan, that really, really might be something dangerous that he's never really had before. So, what about Elijah Mitchell and Jeff Wilson? What's that mean for them and their value?
Honestly, I think it means a lot for Elijah Mitchell because they don't have to pay Elijah Mitchell next year. Really, He's still on that rookie deal. He still has a lot of value. He was obviously the number one option prior to the trade and prior to the injury. But I think Jeff Wilson this season, he probably maintains a solid role, but I do expect Jeff Wilson to probably be traded or yeah, no, I think they'll move on from Jeff Wilson, preferably in a trade. A trade would make the most sense, seeing as they could recoup some of that draft capital that they gave up for Christian.
Yeah. And this is another hit too on Christian. But you got to keep in mind too that he's a 26-year-old back. He's had knee injuries, he's had these issues with his shoulders. So he's been a risk that way. He's on the books for 12.5 million. But kind of like what you said, though, it makes more sense for them to ship off Jeff Wilson. He's an unrestricted free agent next year. You still got Elijah Mitchell on that rookie deal. It makes the most sense to go ahead and off him off, go ahead and get some of that draft capital back, like you said, and then turn around and you're still on that Super Bowl window. So they're still cocked and ready just to keep going.
Yep, I agree. And then on top of that, one thing that I do want to counter on is even though, Christian McCaffrey does have a lot of miles on his legs, I think the committee system that a lot of teams have switched to, and it's already been a known San Fran thing, saves a lot of miles and, gives him a little bit more longevity than he would have had either way.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. And one thing's for sure, too, we know that Carolina didn't really miss him that much this week because Chuba Hubbard and Foreman had themselves a day.
Boys was going crazy.
Yeah. And speaking of some more boys that have had themselves some days, we got these new guys still one's even at San Fran going right over to them. Trey Lance, these new guys. We know these quarterbacks are young. We know these guys got some potential. How much talent for Trey Lance? How much talent or how much potential do you think is there?
I don't know, man. Trey Lance so far, his days have only been bad, but
Yeah.
I think there's talent there, and I do think he could thrive in the Shanahan system. But I think it's too early for me to cast my vote on Trey Lance.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah, he's only had a limited amount of snaps, so we know that Trey, he's got the arm talent. He's got the legs. He could have potentially been the best athlete in the draft. At quarterback outside of maybe Justin Fields when he came out, but with that injury history, you never know. Maybe it'll be just something that kind of comes and goes, and maybe something that derails his career and shortens it. But we know that he's got some of the tangible gifts, but we'll see what it turns into later. Also,
Agreed.
just to keep it consistent, though, he's been 1-1 so far, only 48% completion percentage. Does that mean anything to you?
I mean, he hasn't given a lot to be thankful for. he don't quite put me into the Thanksgiving spirit. He seemed like Santa Claus, the gift that keep on giving, but he
Yeah.
only giving cold.
Yeah, he's only giving
So,
Cole, and it's also kind of feeling like Halloween because he's real spooky when he's got the ball in his hands. You don't know what's gonna happen. It might
yeah,
be a
that's a
trick or
fact.
it might be a treat.
Yeah, for sure.
But just to keep
Yeah,
it in
but
the
on a
NFC though, just keep it in the NFC though, we got Justin Fields, 56% completion percentage through five get, through he's 3-4 this year, man. What are you thinking?
hey man, before we go there, you gotta tell the people your nickname for this man.
Well, I was gonna wait for a grand time to release this, but Justin Fields, some people compare him to Josh Allen. Some people think that he's the next it guy. He's gonna be the Ohio State quarterback that really pops. But I call Justin Fields 4+.
Yeah, he had the audacity to tell me that this man was the leader of the Fantastic Four, but not in a positive way.
Yeah, it's the leader of the Fantastic Four, and that 4+ stands for 4 sacks. Go ahead and look it up. He's almost a guarantee for 4 sacks. For all you bettors out there, that's a little trick for you. If you could bet on 4 sacks for Justin Field, you can guarantee that to hit.
Yeah, but to caveat, last week, I don't know if it was a fluke. I don't know if it was just he played within the flow of the offense. He was a little less fearless, but he gave something to look forward to in the game against the Patriots, one of the better defenses in the league. It didn't look like it, obviously, but I think I need to see a lot more maturation in Justin Fields as a passer, and his pocket presence definitely needs to, bolster. And we need some bolstering of the pocket presence. I
Yeah,
think that's the direction.
yeah, that's fair. I mean, through some of these games, he's been 8 of 17, against Houston. He was 11 of 22 against the Giants, 15 of 21 against Minnesota, 14 of 27 against Houston. All of these numbers respectively, but all that rounds out about 56, percent completion percentage, like I mentioned before. Man, when you're lacking of talent and you're lacking of talent and you're lacking of really being able to see the field, and you don't throw people open, you only throw it to them when they're wide open. That doesn't always turn into a long lasting career with high production. So he's lucky he's got his legs. He was the best athlete coming out, but I fear that with him trying to run around so much, trying to keep plays alive, he might rely on his legs too much and his arms too much, and he might just be Johnny Manziel. He might look a little bit more
Yeah,
like Cam Newton in the bad years than he does ever get a chance to turn into that MVP Cam, that Superman.
yeah, but also to caveat, with a bottom five offensive pass blocking offensive line, and it doesn't give him much to hit home about as far as support.
That's true. Yeah, that's really, really true. Now, just to kind of keep it on the other side now to the AFC, we've got a guy in the blue and red that not too many people talk about. He's a second round pick. He's a favorite of those. Just kidding, but but
Wow.
some are higher than others on him. But he's kept a starting job. He's been 1-4 through through these 5 games. Man, in his last 5, he's 1-4. I don't know about Davis Mills, but what are your thoughts on him, man? 64% completion percentage.
I don't have a definitive position on Davis Mills. Do I think he's the guy? Eh. Do I think he has talent? Yes. But I Texans aren't that good of a football team. They play a pretty dirty football game. They stay in games, they keep them close. Defenses up and down. Run game spectacular, but again, another bottom five offensive line. The receiver talent isn't that great. I'm holding my punches on Davis Mills at the moment.
That's fair. I won't. So I think Davis Mills, I think he just doesn't have the it factor. He Is he fine? Sure. Is he a good bridge quarterback? Very well. Very, very possibly. He's good enough to keep that backup off of his neck. That's all well and good. 64% completion percentage, that's nothing to scoff at. That's good. It's not great, but it's good enough. But I don't see enough of the flash plays. I don't see enough of the plays that win them the game. I don't see a guy that can right the ship. I see a guy that if the ship is already going with the flow, he won't let it sink, which is fine. That could be fine on another team, but I don't know if it'll be long enough on this team with the Texans to actually see if they actually can float. I think it's going to be too many sinking days before we get a chance to actually see if he'll ever float. But, even with this upside, even with this limited upside, there could be something there, but I see the Texans drafting another guy next year.
I don't know if it'll be next year, but I could definitely see where you're coming from.
And coming from another regime, you never know. They could be a little bit more cutthroat with you once they didn't draft you.
That's a fact. That's a solid fact.
But just another person just to kind of pick on in the AFC, and I say pick lightly because he's got it in his name and he likes to throw it to the other team. But Kenny Pickett, 69% completion percentage. He plays hard. He lays it all out there on the line. He's got that fire and tenacity that they love. But when you throwing picks like crazy, how long are they going to deal with this? I know he's learning it all on as he goes because he just kind of got thrusted into position. But what you think about Kenny Pickett?
The commonality between all three quarterbacks we've talked about so far, a bottom 5 offensive line.
Fair.
And then in Kenny Pickett's case, the run game just ain't doing it.
Nope.
Davis Mills got a top 5 rusher. Justin Fields got a top 15 rusher. Kenny Pickett got Najee, but that offensive line just ain't getting it done. Najee can't even be productive. Great receiving core. Defense is playing above its head right now with the lack of the Watt brother. But I think Kenny has a lot of talent. I like Kenny a lot. Kenny has showed us a lot of positives. Does Kenny make some questionable throws sometimes? Yeah, for sure. Is Kenny Pickett Mr. Pick? Yeah, right now. Mm-hmm. But I think Kenny has the it factor. I think Kenny has the tenacity and the fire of a competitor. I think he can make all the throws. I think he does have the decisiveness of a great quarterback. I see Kenny making it far. I like Kenny's game, and I think being with Tomlin definitely works well for Kenny Pickett.
Okay, that's fair. Now I will say though that you are right. When those other teams, when their running backs and their offensive lines are healthy, they have at least top 15 running backs and production that they can get out of there. So that's solid. For Kenny Pickett and his situation, I don't see this line getting any better this year. I don't think he's got the biggest arm. So I don't think he can really win you the games with his arm. I also don't think that he is very decisive with the football at times. I think sometimes he takes those risky throws, kind of like you mentioned with the interceptions. But with the fact that he's going to be willing to stick in there, he's going to fight for his team. He's going to give them a chance, but I think too often than not, those chances are going to go the way of the other team just because they're a little bit more talented in the places that matter, and them missing TJ Watt and having to rely on a rookie quarterback. That's asking a lot of a guy that has got to learn, how to spread his wings and just to learn how to fly.
I agree. I think it'll be tough sledding. It'll be tough sledding, but I think that all in all, over the course of the next, because you got to give him room to grow. Especially in the Trey Lance, the Trevor Lawrences. A lot of these guys didn't get drafted to the best teams. Yeah. And Kenny is one of the guys that got drafted to a better team, but that offensive line just ain't helping him. But I think the path for Kenny is clear.
Yeah, it is. Now, another team that did get a chance to play Kenny Pickett and a young Zach Wilson. Some people have compared his arm talent to that of those of Aaron Rodgers and things of that nature. I may have even been swayed to think that maybe there was something there at one point in time, but I'm going to back off of it a little bit. I think he's a guy that could be a top 10 to 12 type of guy when he's really at his best. But right now, he's still working his way, learning how to win. His team's really winning, with him, not him winning for them. But I digress. 58% completion percentage. And, what we've seen so far, 16 of 26 for 121, 10 of 18 for 110, 14 of 21 for 210, and 18 of 36 for 252. I had to get those numbers out there before you use them against me. But either way it goes, Zach Wilson has not been the most overwhelming quarterback fit right now, but his team has been winning. What are your thoughts on him?
I would say I don't want to crucify him, but I just don't care. Zach Wilson gives me at first I was like, maybe Zach is the guy. Zach Wilson gives me big Jimmy Garoppolo vibes, big Jimmy G vibes. He gives me, I won't throw you out of the game, but I won't win you the game vibes. He gives me like Robert Salah is like, you know what? We're just gonna run the ball and not allow this up.
That's fair.
Do I think he has the arm talent? Yes. Has he shown me any more than that? What he's shown me so far has been quite pitiful, in my opinion. But I digress. I won't bury him too deep.
Okay. Well, I will say though is Zach Wilson has done something that you did mention, and he's been born with it, and that is his arm talent. There's not a lot of guys that can really whip it like he does. Even at his young age, he's got a slender frame, but a guy that can, throw those 20-yard out routes, a guy that can buy a little bit of time and then throw that deep post that we've seen the likes of Mahomes and Allen's throw at times. That don't just grow on every tree.
That's a
So
fact.
you give a guy enough talent like that, you let him learn the system, you let him really grow and mature. You got him on a rookie deal, give him a good running game, RIP to Breece Hall. But you do enough of those good things, hey, you never know what you're going to find. You might find a guy that can really win you those games because he's been a solid manager. You mentioned it earlier. Hey, he hasn't lost in the games, but who knows?
That's
Maybe we'll see if he can actually win him some games too.
And I could be being unfair. This could be a case of Josh Allen in his rookie year, where he just hadn't figured it out all the way yet, and maybe the team wasn't there to push him to the next level. Could be the case. I don't think so though.
Yeah, that's fair. And I think he'll actually turn out to be at least a top 12 kind of guy at the end of the day. But not this year, but later. So we've got another AFC darling that people have been lauding, a la me. Not so much you, but 63% completion percentage through 5 games, 22 of 43, 310, no touchdowns, no picks. 20 of 22, 165, 1 touchdown, 0 picks. 25 of 47, 286 yards, 0 touchdowns, 2 picks. Philly, I didn't really want to talk about this one, but 11 of 23, 174 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1
Gotta
pick.
take the good with the bad, baby.
Yeah, you do. And then against those, against the Chargers, 28 of 39, 262, 3 touchdowns, 0 picks. It's not been all good. It's been a little bit of bad. Trevor Lawrence, what you got?
So it's hard for me to go against Trevor Lawrence too aggressively. I don't think he has the it factor, but I think Trevor Lawrence has the potential to be a very solid quarterback. I don't think there's really not a lot for me to criticize with Trevor Lawrence. I think that Trevor Lawrence is going to be the guy that everybody praised him into coming into the league and being. I'll leave that to fate. But in the grand scheme of things, I think that Trevor Lawrence will definitely end up being, one of those top 10 guys. Maybe squeeze an MVP in there if the team talent, turns up to, the appropriate level. We've seen Matt Ryan win one. Don't bump him too much. Calm down. Slow your roll.
Slight. The slight. It's the knife in the side. No, I refuse. I see top 5. Not right now, but I see top 5. Give them 2 years. I'm going to say it now. You can start the timer up. There's no timer. But either way, I see a top 5 quarterback. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in 2 years. And either way, I see a guy that can make all the throws. He's learning how to win. His team is young. He's got a lot of rookies. He's got a lot of guys that are really trying to find their way out. They're finding ways to lose games more than they are to win them this year, which is expected with a young team. But we see a guy that can make all the throws. He can drop it in the bucket. But there are times when his mechanics go out the window and we see these ducks. We see some things that happen with the fumbles in the Eagles game. But even in the same Eagles game, we are seeing him bring them back, bring them down to an 8-point game when they were down big. So a guy that can will their team back into at least a 1-score game at one point, hey, I'll take my chances on a young guy with a rookie contract like that.
So let me ask you this. If it came down to it, same team, same roster, Justin Herbert or Trevor Lawrence?
That's not fair. But you know what?
Answer the question.
I'm a little impartial because my fantasy team has Justin Herbert. And you know this. You know this too.
But talent-wise.
Talent-wise, I'd say Trevor Lawrence. I see more in Trevor Lawrence than I do in Herbert. I do. I don't like that you put my feet to the fire because I wasn't ready to say this publicly. I was gonna wait for another day. But you know what? Y'all get 2. Y'all get 2 today. Y'all get 2. Drop the bombs for you.
You rolling. You rolling for sure.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Trevor Lawrence. I see a guy that can really do it all. I see a guy that's willing to will his team to be able to win. I see a guy he's got the it factor. And then yes, it's also that he was the prototypical quarterback that everybody loved, but he's also a guy that when he's in a zone, man, we saw what he did against the Colts. I mean, it was 20-22. Not too many can get on a hot streak like that. But hey, time will tell. Start the clock, America.
Agreed.
But another guy, though, that you're more of a fan of, and actually, I guess 2 guys you might be a fan of. We'll see. And young Mac Attack Jones, and don't worry, B. Bailey Zappi. We've got a 65% completion rating in this corner with Mac Jones. We've got a 70% completion percentage in this corner. Who do you got? Would you rather have the Zap Attack or would you rather have the Mac Attack?
I got a Mac Jones jersey upstairs. This ain't up for discussion. I jumped for joy when we drafted Mac Jones. And I stand on that. I think Mac deserves some criticism for sure. Because Mac is the guy that he doesn't have the greatest arm strength, but he has the gunslinger mentality. Wow. I like how you slid that in there. That was cute. But he definitely has the gunslinger mentality, and he likes to make plays. Mm-hmm. I've seen consistent progression in Mac's gameplay, whereas, year one, Mac had lead feet, act like he didn't even know how to move, couldn't make it around the pocket, couldn't avoid sacks. Yeah, for sure. Like he's like a fish that knows how to swim. He's understood the concepts and he's growing, but is it the progress that everybody expected him to make in year 2? No. But then we also have to take in consideration the difference in play calling and offensive coordinator. You got a defensive coordinator calling your plays. And then on top of that, you get hurt, you sitting on the sideline, Bailey Zappi comes in, they run the offense one specific way, a way that they hadn't been running the offense with Mac at the head. And Bailey Zappi comes and has, 2 good games. He played decent in the potential comeback against Green Bay. Then Detroit, we know what he did there. The stats for him against Detroit weren't that spectacular. It was a good game, but it was more of a Ramondre Stevenson show, great defensive gameplay. And it's just, I don't have any slight to Bailey, but I'm running with that boy Mac.
What I will say is I just hope that Mac doesn't turn into the great Trent Richardson. I would not like that for his career. I don't want him to be another Alabama product that just doesn't end up panning out. But Mac Jones in 2021, 22 touchdowns, 13 interceptions was okay. That was acceptable as a rookie. Like that was actually kind of a good year, with all things considered. Slightly above average yards per attempt in that year as well. This year, well, he's regressing for sure. 2 touchdowns, 6 picks. It hasn't looked amazing from him. But what I will say though is Mac has poise. He's got something about him that makes me think that he's got the edge over Zappy. Everybody wanted to go ahead and be Zappy. Everybody thought it was going to be Zappily ever after because they thought Bailey Zappi's here to stay. He's our savior once today. No, Bailey Zappi is trash. Bailey Zappi is a bottom. Okay, let me back up. He's not bottom tier. He is a mid-level backup at best. He's a game dependent backup. If he has a good run game, if he has a solid defense, able to make the throws easy, only having to do 1, maybe 2 reads, getting a lot of man because you can run the ball efficiently. Zappi's got it. He's good enough for that. But we saw what he did this week against the Bears. He really tried to go ahead and throw into tighter windows, and yeah, he liked the Bears a little bit more than he liked his wide receivers, obviously. But with all that being said, I think Zappy's he's the people's champ, but he's not my champ. So I would side with
Agreed.
Mac Jones, and I think Mac Jones has got a little bit more to him. I still think Mac is a little underwhelming. I'm not seeing much more than maybe top 20 at quarterback. He might get to 15 at some point, but he just needs to get better at making those throws. But he can make those throws more consistently than Zappy can make those throws. But I'm not hating or anything, but hey, it is what it is though. But let's go to these old guys. There may be some old dogs, but maybe they can still learn some new tricks. We'll find out. From these old guys, which one of these guys do you like? Are you liking a Tom Brady? Are you liking a Matt Ryan? Or are you liking an Aaron Rodgers? Let's start with Tom. What's your thoughts on him?
First of all, you know where I stand. I take Tom all day. This ain't up for discussion. it don't matter what Aaron Rodgers do, what Matt Ryan do, which ain't shit in either of their cases. But I'll take Tom all day. Tom's in a bad spot right now, honestly. Team's not healthy with you down 2 offensive linemen, 3 starting DBs every week, 3 of your 4 starting receivers can't stay on the field consistently every week. Neither of your best 2 tight ends are healthy week to week. It just gives a lot to be desired. You throw for 380 yards, but your running back only has 65 yards because you're shuffling around offensive linemen every week. Now, injuries are a part of the game. I understand that. But when you damn near missing 11 starters any given week, at least a guaranteed 8 every week, and Tom's 40, bro. Like a 40-year-old with 8 starters going week to week, bro. That's
I want to say he's 44, actually. Yeah, he's up there.
Yeah.
It's getting harder and harder for Tom. I will say though, I see some drop off. Tom's not top 5 anymore. He really might not even be top 10. He might be, but we're not seeing it right now because Tom has been going through. He's going through a lot. He's having to deal with stuff at home. He's having to deal with stuff on the field, and it's showing. His team's not that good, like you alluded to, but his interceptions haven't been rising. His completions percentage has dropped some, but at the same time, with his touchdowns still at a 2, maybe I think his touchdowns are actually maybe like a 3 or 4 to 1. When it comes to that touchdown interception rate. So if he's a guy that can still put it together, he may have to get on his guys a little bit more, wait till they get healthy, and eventually they'll figure it out. They just can't have Mike Evans dropping touchdowns, first play of the game. They can't have Godwin dropping first downs, throughout the game. And that O-line's got to give him some time, and they've got to give him some help because if they can't run with Leonard Fournette, it's going to be tough sledding out here. But I'm not going to pile on Brady. I'm going to pile on the Bucks a little bit more. Now, let's get to one of these other old guys and a man by the name of Matt Ryan. also known as Matty Ice. So,
That boy.
68% completion percentage. Man, man, oh man. It has been a rough, rough road. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. It's gone from Super Bowl to worst QB. Whew. 27 of 37 for 222. 2 touchdowns, 0 picks. 27 of 37, 356, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick. That don't sound that bad. 26 of 41, 0 touchdowns, 2 picks. 42 of 58, 3 touchdowns, 0 picks. Man, 33 of 44, 243, 1 touchdown, 2 picks. The completion percentage is there, but them sacks and those fumbles, they tell a completely different story. What's the story that you're gonna tell me, O?
It pains me to say this, bro, but Matty Ice is ice cold, not in a positive way. Now it's about time to pack Buddy up and send him where he's supposed to be. He like Russell Wilson and somebody else gonna be looking for a job on Indeed come next season.
Yeah.
And it's rough because it just ain't there. It ain't there.
Yeah.
It's not. Like I would love to blame the offensive line. I would love to blame the lack of run game. I would love to blame anything else. But Matty Ice he ice cold. He not showing up.
Yeah. You kind of took the cake with the whole thing because I am gonna blame the O line. I am gonna blame the run game. I'm gonna blame all those things. But the one that doesn't get the most blame is Matt Ryan because we've always talked about the cliff with all these other quarterbacks. He stared that cliff right in the face and walked right off the edge at the start of this year.
Oh, he dove off.
Yeah.
Head first.
5-finger splash right off the cliff, right down to his death. Because this is quarterback purgatory. Nobody wants to see this. And then to make matters worse, he's got an ugly contract to match. But essentially we won't give you all the details, but if he was on the roster and was hurt, it would be $29 million on the hook. So you're not going to expect Matt Ryan to play another snap. And to make it all just as bad, like we've mentioned, he's been bad. So if he's bad, he ain't going to play no way. So bye-bye, Matt Ryan. Hello. To make matters even worse, we've got another older quarterback that is staring that cliff right in the face. Has he gone off the edge? Or
yes,
will he come back? Now the old dog. 67% completion percentage. 27 of 35, 255 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick. 21 of 35, 251 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick. Man, that's the last 2 games. It hasn't looked so bad, but if you're watching these games, it's like watching paint dry. What you think about Aaron Rodgers?
I was preemptive when I said yes, but Aaron Rodgers is in a precarious scenario because his defense playing lights out, but it don't matter because they're on the field all game.
I hear you.
So the lack of offensive production is putting their defense in a spot where, by the middle of the second quarter, them boys gassed. And now they're giving up 38 points in Washington. Like, what else I gotta say, bro?
Crack a Heineken for Heineke, because hey, you're gonna be drinking today after that win.
It's rough, man. It's rough. It's rough to watch. And I'm always all for the Aaron Rodgers slander, but in this scenario, he ain't got no help. He ain't got no help. Offensive line is playing cool, but they can't throw the ball, so their run game is ineffective. He's shooting blanks. Ain't nothing he can do about it.
I'm seeing a consistent thing with Aaron Rodgers where he loves throwing to the flats. He loves to take the check down. He loves to throw the short pass. Teams are catching on to this. He's been doing this for a long time, but before there was a threat down the field that would open those lanes up. They're not open anymore because you can see some numbers that makes it look like they take shots down the field, but running a go route down the sideline and just threatening throwing it, that's not being an aggressive offense. This offense is very, very limited. It has young wide receivers and an old quarterback, and they're not on the same page. So when your best asset on offense can't be used because you can't stretch the field, well, it's not going to be too good for your offense, and it's not going to be too good for this team. I will say I think the defense has been underwhelming from what I expected. I thought the defense would be great. I think they've been okay at times given the situation. Yeah, you could blame the offense for it, but I also think that their horses just aren't coming to play sometimes. Sometimes they take days off, and they got to be better than that. You can't have Jai
I
Alexander
agree.
getting burned. You can't have Rashawn Gary, not being great, while he's on the field. These guys got to take over games every single game because their offense isn't going to do it, so the defense has got to do it.
Agreed.
And to make matters absolutely worse, Aaron Rodgers, as aloof as he can be, he pointing fingers. And when they say when you point fingers out at others, sometimes you need to point that thumb right back at you. And Aaron Rodgers needs to point it back at him.
And my grandpa used to tell me, point one finger at somebody else, you got four staring back at you, pimp.
That's the truth. That's the truth. We talked about the old dogs. Let's talk about an even older dog, and Pete Carroll and the Seahawks. He's found ways to have an old school mentality, but still be fluid and willing to kind of change his approach to things and game plan specific. He kicked Russ out the door and said, "You go get that money elsewhere. You ain't gonna get it here." But then you look and he brings in a Geno Smith, a young, well, he ain't young either. Never mind. But he's hungry. He's hungry and willing to learn the offense and to execute it well. So he's thrived in the offense this year, and now it's looking like Pete Carroll's got the upper hand. What are your thoughts on Pete Carroll and what he's been able to do so far this year?
I'm actually very impressed because, especially under the case that defense was abysmal last year, extremely abysmal last year. Bottom five in points given up all year. Just it didn't look bad, and somehow, some way, this year they turned it around. Not too tremendously, but enough to keep them in games. And then on the other hand, Gino is doing enough to win them games.
Yes.
That man playing out of his mind, and he's playing so out of his mind that you might be able to argue that maybe Gino had the talent the whole time. He just wasn't in the right place.
Yeah, I mean, you can't deny it right now with Gino. Now, what I will say, I don't think Gino's talent is that great that this is what's to come. I don't see him as the next Kurt Warner. I don't see him as the next comeback kid, if you will. But this is his moment of glory, and hey, more power to you, Gino. Keep going, and I hope the ride doesn't stop, even though I fear that it will at some point, sometime soon. But either way, let's go on to someone whose system has not been so fluid, has not been so willing to change, and the same division, if you will, having to deal with the likes of Kyler Murray, Cliff Kingsbury. He's been criticized in the past for, getting off the hot starts and then just people figuring him out, and they don't find ways to win. He's also been criticized in the past as well to not really be willing to change his game plan, and we've seen this time and time again. Pete Carroll, 154, 104 and 1 with his record. You look at it, someone else is much younger, of course, but 48 and 58, and they had a team that was number one for most of last year in the NFC. This is weird. We don't see this very often. So Cliff Kingsbury, what are your thoughts on him?
I don't have too much of an opinion on Cliff Kingsbury. I haven't got to watch a lot of the Cardinals, but some just ain't right in Arizona. Some ain't right in Arizona. And I think it's Kyler, but I digress. It's not enough there for me to make judgment because I'm not watching Arizona. They're not coming up on my TV on Sundays, and I'm not watching them. Yeah, I do actually. I do. They still ain't getting played on my TV
local
on Sundays.
TV, and he still ain't gonna make the cut, huh?
Yeah, no, absolutely not. Absolutely not. And they had a primetime game last week and still ain't come on my TV. They just ain't getting it done.
Yeah.
They not. And I'm not I'm openly not the biggest fan of Kyler Murray. I think he has the tangibles, but it ain't he ain't there. He's not him. He ain't it. He don't got it.
Yeah, hey, I'm not gonna disagree with you there. I mean, we've talked about Kyler before, but I kind of feel that I think in this spread offense, it's limited Kyler. Now, what is he capable of doing? I don't know. I really don't. Because back in college, he was running the spread offense. Now it seems like they're running a modified version of the spread offense where, they just have guys spread out wide. They try to find out who's open first. And from last game, if that's an indication of anything going forward, he sees D Hop, he throws to D Hop. So that doesn't make me think that he can go through progressions very, very well, let alone see over the line anyway. But, anyway, Cliff Kingsbury is a guy that needs to change his approach. He needs to stop focusing on the pass so heavily and just be a little bit more balanced, be a little bit more unpredictable. Because when you get up in games and then you let teams back in it because you don't run the ball or run the clock out, I mean, you just leave the door wide open for teams to come back. And maybe that's a reason why teams are coming back on them, or that they're losing these games when they're in control for some of them. But that's just my thoughts on Cliff. But another quarterback, actually, in the NFC, you guys have been asking about them, so we'll give you what you want. The Cowboys, Dak Prescott on one side, Cooper Rush on the other. Who you got, Oh?
It's funny because one of my good friends is one of the guys that recommended us discuss this topic, and he knows where I stand on Dak Prescott. But in the current scenario, this is counter to my normal stance. Dak is still the guy in Dallas. And last week's production is not a show of the future. I think Dak is working his way back in, getting his feet back wet, taking back control of a team that was just kind of flowing, going with the flow, playing through their defense. Game plan was situated around the backup quarterback being in. Do I think that the game plan going forward with Dak at the helm should change a little bit to where Dallas is more aggressive running the ball with Dak on the field still? Yes. We know it works. We know it works for them. And Dak has the ability to make the throws that Cooper Rush does not. I can't argue that. Am I a fan of Dak? No. But in this instance, Dak is still the guy. That's not an arguable point for me.
Okay. And I would have to agree as well. Cooper Rush, it's just not a lot there. It's a lot. It's a lot like Bailey Zappi. You give a guy a good game script, you give a guy a good defense, good run game. Yeah, he's gonna look good. But if you put him up against some real talent, you make him make some tough throws. Cooper's not gonna get the job done. He's gonna come up short. It's a little tough. I don't want to pile on the guy. But he's a strong backup. And you know what? Off of this 5-game stretch where he is going to get paid for a long time because of that. So kudos to you, Cooper. You enjoy that fat sack, sir. But as for Dak,
pause.
You're right, pause, but it had to be said. But for Dak, 19 of 25, 207 yards and a touchdown against Tampa, 14 of 29, 134 yards, 0 touchdowns, 1 pick. Man, to me, Dak isn't it. Will they win games? Yes. Will they likely make the playoffs this year? Yes. Will Dak go and beat a Niners? Will Dak go and beat an Eagles in the playoffs? Will Dak go and beat the Bills or the Chiefs in the playoff situation in the Super Bowl? No. So if he's not that guy, then he's not a guy. He's just a guy that's going to get you there, but not win the big game, a la Jim Kelly. So, hey, hate me if you want, but you guys might get there once or twice or 3 times, 4 times, who knows? But I doubt you're going to win it, so you better be praying for 11 from heaven to go ahead and gift you a Super Bowl like Lawrence Taylor did so long ago, because Dak ain't the one that's going to will you to it.
But, hey, who knows? That defense might be able to get the job done.
Yeah, they might be able to, but I can tell you what, if it comes down to the hands of Cooper Rush, he definitely ain't going to get you done. He's just going to be sitting there taking hits. So, and for the final segment of our podcast, we would like to take a second to remember some of these fantasy players. You know, I know it was tough for you this week. It's never easy when you get to lose someone that you were depending on in that week. But we are sorry for Breece Hall, gone for the year. We are sorry for J.C. Jackson, out for the year. I'm even sorry for Njoku for a couple weeks, and it's weird to say that. We're both from Ohio, but I can tell you one thing: we were not the supporters of the Browns. But Njoku has turned into something of value. But we're so sorry for you for the next few weeks.
Agreed.
But there's always next week. You just remember that. Well, I am DJ Ricks.
Oh.
And we'll be out of here, and we'll catch you guys next week. See you. Peace.
Peace.